Do you struggle to understand the ISO 14001-2015 requirement for an evaluation of compliance and find that you don't have the full understanding of your compliance status within your organisation's resources, such as through your environmental manager or through environmental consultants? So, can you use the results of regulatory authority audits or inspections from, say, the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States or the Environment Agency in England to help with the evaluation of compliance? An ISO interpretation could help you more fully understand whether regulatory authority audits or inspections could form part of your evaluation of compliance. Let's take a look. Welcome to EMSmastery, where we look at the strategies and tactics to be successful in environmental management. If we're meeting for the first time, my name is Andrew Marlow. This episode looks at one of the interpretations given by the ISO Technical Committee TC207, Subcommittee 1, which is the subcommittee responsible for ISO 14001-2015 and other associated environmental international standards. The interpretation process operates as an escalation of an interpretation inquiry from a national member body such as BSI in the UK or ANSI in the United States, with all interpretation inquiries reviewed on an annual basis and their results published on the Subcommittee 1 website. It is important to note that its interpretations do not change the requirements in ISO 14001, but are intended to give users a better understanding on the application of ISO 14001. The question about regulatory authority audits and inspections was raised by the American National Standards Institute, ANSI, and relates to the intent of Clause 9.1.2 on the evaluation of compliance. The question asked was, is the intent of the requirement of Clause 9.1.2, evaluation of compliance, that only those working for, on or behalf of the organisation conduct evaluations of compliance, or can these evaluations include those conducted by regulatory authorities? A quick recap on Clause 9.1.2 shows that it has requirements for the organisation to establish, implement and maintain the processes needed to evaluate fulfilment of its compliance obligations. Here, the organisation has the freedom to determine the frequency that compliance will be evaluated. Once it has evaluated compliance, then it needs to take action, if needed, and the organisation needs to maintain knowledge and understanding of its compliance status. Evidence of the results of the compliance evaluation are required to be retained as documented evidence. So, back to the question. It restates, when covering the requirements for the organisation to meet the evaluation of compliance, that it is normally understood to include two types of persons which can be involved as described in ISO 14001. Firstly, employees working for the organisation, such as the environmental manager or anyone else or a group of persons charged with the evaluation of compliance. And secondly, ISO 14001-2015 refers to persons working on behalf of the organisation, such as environmental consultants or external auditors. It then introduces a third type of person, namely a regulatory authority, such as the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States and the Environment Agency in England, and asks whether their inspections of environmental permits and other forms of environmental legal compliance can be used to fulfil this requirement for the evaluation of compliance. Now, it is commonly understood that regulatory authorities, by their very name, are responsible for regulatory and compliance issues. They would, obviously, be the organisations which, in the event of a non-compliance with a regulatory requirement, would initiate compliance sanctions. So, can an organisation using ISO 14001 as the basis for their environmental management system use the evaluation of compliance from a regulatory authority's audit or inspection? The interpretation given by the ISO TC 207 Subcommittee 1 is revealing about the intent of the evaluation of compliance requirement and can be broken down into three parts. Firstly, the intent of clause 9.1.2 is that the organisation will determine how it will periodically evaluate compliance and could choose to include evaluations conducted by internal staff, consultants and/or regulatory agencies. Here the interpretation clarifies that it is for the organisation to determine how it wants to conduct its periodic evaluation of compliance, and that the persons contributing are not limited to the internal staff and consultants, but can include regulatory agencies. The interpretation then goes on to make a second point that the organisation can use information from regulatory agency audits and inspections as part of its evaluation of compliance, but they cannot rely on such audits and inspections alone. So their interpretation is that the results of the regulatory agency's audits and inspections can be used as part of the organisation's evaluation of compliance, but it is not anticipated that the regulatory agency's audits and inspections will normally meet the full requirement for the evaluation of compliance on their own. And finally, the interpretation makes its third point that periodic compliance assessments performed on a sampling basis, for example, those conducted internally by consultants or by regulatory agencies, must satisfy the requirements of clause 9.1.2 if, taken together, can cover all the applicable legal requirements over a period of time specified by the organisation. The organisation needs to consider the periodicity or frequency of the compliance assessments and, together with their sampling processes, ensure that all applicable legal requirements are evaluated over the organisation's defined period for their evaluation of compliance. So, to summarise, the ISO TC 207 Subcommittee 1 interpretation clarifies that the results of regulatory authorities' audits and inspections can be used to support the organisation's evaluation of compliance, together with other evaluation sources from internal and external resources, provided that the organisation ensures that the full requirements for the evaluation of compliance of all of its legal requirements over its defined evaluation period. Further information on this interpretation is given in the description box below, including a link to the resources on the EMSmastery.com website. If this episode has helped to advance your understanding of the evaluation of compliance requirements in ISO 14001-2015, please subscribe to this YouTube channel to ensure that you don't miss out on other future episodes on environmental management and sustainability. Until then, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this video, you can watch other episodes by clicking on the boxes on the top and bottom right, and to subscribe to this channel, click on the link to the left. Thank you.